sea and the sky, and you and I. Sea, sky, and you and I all know the way. Oh.
Hi, I'm Jim Connors. I used to be somebody, I'm fond of saying lately. I'm from Manuka. Mayor Wenzel told me one time that Manuka is an Indian word meaning place where settlers vote twice.
That's right.
And he said, when I die, I want to be buried there so I could remain active in politics. A little bit about myself. I went to East Stroudsburg University with Judge Munley. I was the goodest student in the class. In fact, my senior year was 3 of the happiest years of my life. And our mothers and fathers said, God loved Tommy and Jimmy. They finished college in only 2 terms, Reagan's and Bush's. But I have to tell you, the time that Mayor Wenzel introduced me as a model mayor, I thought I was doing real well, till I went home and I looked up in the dictionary the word model. It said, a small imitation of the real thing. Then he introduced me as a warm mayor. I looked up the word warm in the dictionary. It said, not so hot.
So hot, that's right.
So that's my Billy Crystal imitation here at the Oscars or the Academy Awards. And I just want to say I am so honored to be here with 2 dear friends of mine and 2 great public servants, Judge Tom Munley and Mayor David Wenzel. And I'd like to thank John Darcy for producing ESC, Electric City TV, and for the support of Mayor Chris Doherty. And I'd like to thank our director, Mark McLaury, who's also director of the camera direction today, for the opportunity to have a conversation with these 2 unique individuals. We'll have a little bit of music that you've heard at the beginning and a little bit at the end, and that's another local talent, John Coates Jr., and on piano, and singing Nancy Reed, and she's from the community here. John is from the Delaware Water Gap. And we're going to show 2 pieces of film, very short, and I think what it'll do, it will show the connection that Tom Munley and Jimmy Connors have, and the connection that Dave Wenzel has with both Tommy and myself. And so we'll start on that. We might as well run the film now. We'll run a little piece of film from Vietnam, and that'll be Tom Munley you'll see there. And then a film afterwards of the inception of the mall at Steamtown, and that was a project that Dave Wenzel and I touched on. So we'll show them now.
Attorney Tom Munley has always answered the call. When his country called, Tom Munley answered.
I'm Mayor Jim Connors. It's December 13th, 1991. This is downtown Scranton. It's October 6th, 1993. This is downtown Scranton. We've come a long way in 4 years. Well, Tom, let me ask you a question. What memories does that film bring back to you from jumping out of that helicopter?
Jim, I'll tell you, it was and I relive my memories a lot with Dave Wenzel, because Dave happens to be one of my best friends in the whole world, as you are. As we talk actually you and I talk
Every day.
Every single day. I talk to Dave a couple times a week, and most of my memories from Vietnam are not good memories. As Dave knows, I was in the infantry, and they are not good memories. But Dave and I go back reliving our memories about Vietnam. And I have to say, one time when Dave was mayor, we went up to see the movie Platoon. I think it was.
I saw that.
That's right.
Dave and I, Dave was the mayor.
1986.
I saw that movie.
What year was it, Dave?
1986.
1986. We went up to see the movie Platoon together. Of course, since Dave was the mayor, TV, the TV cameras were there and the newspaper was there, as you know what it's like
Yes.
to be the mayor. But it was, Dave and I had this, we kept up our our feeling about Vietnam, and a lot of times we disagreed, about Vietnam and how the war was fought. But Dave and I kept it up and kept our relationship up, and that's what I remember the most about my experience. The friends that I got from this Vietnam experience. I'll tell you the truth, Mayor. I still have friends that I had when I was actually over there in the infantry, in the woods, in the jungle, or whatever you want to call it. And to this day, I talk to these people on a regular basis.
Do you, Tommy?
Yes, I do.
Mayor, you gave the supreme sacrifice, and I knew you at South Scranton Junior High School.
That's right.
And then over at Scranton Central, and I kidded around about me being the goodest student in the school. You really were the best student in the school, and you were the most admirable person, and everybody looked up to you. And you sacrificed a great deal. How did you not become bitter, Mayor? I don't see a bit of bitterness in you ever in all the years I know you.
Jimmy, that was I have to owe a lot to everything that's happened in my career to my wife. Janet and I were married just 3 months before I went to Vietnam. When I was injured, she was there when I first got back to the United States, and she stayed with me through the entire process of rehabilitation. And she is just the kind of a person who, whenever I got down or anything, she would get on my back and she would say, look, you got to handle this, you're going to be all right, and as long as I have your family, and you know more than anything else that without the family you really don't have
family
that much.
is so important.
I saw some people down at Valley Forge Army Hospital, and one of the reasons that some of these people went into the military was to get away from a bad family situation. And then they end up, missing a limb or something and being in the hospital. And these are the people who, I don't know what happened with them, but they were not doing that well as far as their rehabilitation was. And so I owe everything to my wife, really,
You
as
had
far
the
as that's
support.
concerned. Not having that kind of a support system.
I say this in all humility and modesty, and not to stroke your ego, because you don't need that. You are my hero, and you are a hero, and you're a hero of us here in South Scranton, not only because of what happened to you, but because of the way you've conducted yourself over the years.
Well, you embarrass me now.
Well, that's what I do best, is embarrass people. Tommy, how has Dave interacted with you when both of you have come back?
Well, here it's what you just said about Dave being your hero. I said that publicly. If I had to pick one person that I would feel that would be one of the people that I look up to in my life would be David Wenzel.
Right.
We have a lot in common. Dave and I were over in Vietnam at the same time. We've maintained a friendship for the last, I don't know, whatever it is, 30, 40 years. So, and I feel that Dave is very inspirational. I'm lucky I came back without being injured. And a lot of times I wonder myself how Dave could keep a positive attitude.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll call Dave up if I'm depressed. I'm thinking, who am I to be depressed?
Right.
And Dave will always just say something to cheer me up. I'll say, don't worry about this or don't worry about that. And how do you not look up to somebody like that? So, and Jim, that's how we kept our relationship for the last, we spent a lot of time together.
Right.
And we still do, and I enjoy every second
Yes,
of it.
I know you do,
Now,
Tom.
Jim, I was teaching a class over at the University of Scranton on the Vietnam War, and Tom was one of the people that I would invite to come in and speak to the class. And at the end of every semester, we always asked the students to write out, what did I like best about this course, or what could we change and everything. And every semester, they always put down our favorite guest speaker was Tom Munlake. Yeah, because he was always very interesting in what he had to say. And it wasn't always what the book said, you
No.
know, really, as far as how the military felt about the war. But
And he was for real.
But Tommy was Tommy. Well, that comes across with Tom. He
Yes.
comes across as a genuine person.
Yes,
and all that.
that's right.
And the kids can pick that up really when they see
Mayor,
it.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but Tommy and I were in class together at East Stroudsburg.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the day that he wasn't there. I remember that day like it was yesterday. And he and I had becoming friends because my uncle Jim Conlon was friends with his family. And he reminded me of that one time when we went to the United Nations on a field trip. And so I always looked forward to seeing Tommy in our government class. And one day he was gone. And I said, where's Munley? And they said, he's gone to Vietnam.
Wow.
And I was, that's how I found out. And I was crushed. And then when he came back, myself and a dear friend of ours who was a graduate of the University of Scranton went down to visit Tommy in New Orleans, where he was in law school. Joe Ashcroft was our friend.
1971.
Joe Ashcroft reminds me so much of you because of the integrity and the honesty and the great moral fiber that he has. Does
Absolutely.
that come through for
Absolutely.
you, Tom? I don't know.
Another man who can inspire you just by spending a couple hours with him. Joe Ashcroft, great man.
The other piece of film that we showed, Mayor,
Right.
was like you getting a football and on the 1 yard line, catching it and running down through the crowds and bowling
Yeah.
people over one at a time, 11 people, an incredible run, 99 and a half yards. And when he got to the goal line, I turned to him, I was on his team, and I said, Mayor, I'll take that.
Yes.
And he handed me the football, and I took it over the goal line. That was the story of the Scranton Mall.
Well, I think
with
it was
Dave
more
and
like I made it down to the 20-yard line, the red zone.
The red
okay?
zone. Okay, you're giving
And
me
then
a little bit more.
And then I passed it off to you, lateraled it off to you.
That-
That's a very good analogy and all that. You know, the mall project in downtown Scranton for the 8 years, first of all, it took
That's
8
right.
years, my entire administration,
About
and
4
your
years of
first
mine.
whole administration.
First whole administration.
What this did was to keep the focus of our community and our downtown, how important it was for us to have a shopping center in our
Yes.
downtown area, and how important it was to the overall economic health of our city and all. And so I look on that as a very, every time I go past the mall, I always think of it as being one of the hallmarks of our renaissance in the city of Scranton.
Yes.
Because really that's one of the things when the city started turning around. The thing about the mall is that it was a project that when we started off, it was only supposed to be $35 million. And then suddenly we decided to put the parking underneath, and it just jumped all the way up to $45 million. And then we decided we were going to include both the Oppenheim building and the Samters building, and suddenly
Fabulous.
it becomes a $75
That was
million.
brilliant.
And before it was
And
all
the
over
Globe,
with,
Mayor, you
and then you
included
include
the
the
Globe.
Globe, it suddenly becomes a $100 million project. We haven't had a $100 million project in the city of Scranton since then.
No.
And it was more money was spent on that project than in the entire SRA spent in the previous 40 years.
And Mayor,
Yeah.
that was the catalyst for $500 million, Mike Washoe used to tell me, of investment in our downtown. The first was the $100 million,
Sure.
and then $500 million came after it.
That's right.
And whereas other mid-sized cities in those years were failing or being overrun with drug dealers and the bad guys, our downtown flourished, and so did our neighborhoods.
Exactly.
And that was very significant. Mayor, I want to ask you this question because I knew you down at South Scranton. You were a sophomore, and I was a freshman in those days. The intermediate schools went from 7th to 10th grade.
Right.
Did you ever see your life going in this direction that it went, and did you ever anticipate any of the things that happened to you along the way?
Absolutely not.
What did you have in mind?
Well, I would look at myself as Forrest Gump. You know, things just happened to me along the way. And I never planned on going into the military, but, you know, after I was drafted, after I had dropped out of Penn State,
Yes.
and the draft board said, okay, you can go to the University of Scranton, but as soon as you put in your 4 years, you're going to have to come in and serve your time. So while I was at the university, I decided to go through the ROTC, and that's
Yes.
one of the reasons I became an officer then. And then after I got out of the military, as a disabled person, I was asked to go to a ceremony for Memorial Day. And I gave the Pledge of Allegiance. I happened to run into Mayor Peters at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He offered me a job over at City Hall, and I was, this is terrific.
Wow.
And then when Peters decided not to run, and I knew I was going to lose my job, at that time the treasurer of the city, Bill Feldkamp, said to me, why don't you run for tax collector? So none of these things were anything I really planned. It was just kind of happening as you go along. And then, of course, 8 years later, since you can't succeed yourself after 8 years as the tax collector, I only know one other place to go, and that was to be the mayor.
Yeah.
And from there on, it was just one of these, like Forrest Gump, what happened to him, and everything just kind of happened to him. It wasn't anything that he planned.
I'm very proud of myself that I was one of the people that urged you to run, to Janet's horror.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Do you remember, Tom, the thoughts that were going through your mind when Dave was getting ready to run?
I remember. I used to say to myself.
Were you here or were you in New Orleans?
No, I was here. I was here when Dave ran, and I used to say to myself, how could Dave do it because of his disability? But he went all over. He campaigned. He did a great job, and the people liked him.
Do you know what he did, Tom? One time that I saw. You know how rumors start in these campaigns? Well, the rumor was out there that because of Dave's injuries in Vietnam, that he would not be up for the job. He called me up. He said, I want you to meet me tomorrow. It happened to be a Saturday, downtown on the courthouse square. I want to talk to you about a few things. We'll take a walk around the square, and we'll talk about the campaign. He walked around the square. He exhausted me. And the word went out from that day forth that argument did not fly, that Dave Winsel wasn't up to the job.
Right.
And I have said this over and over. My nephew, Jerry McNamara, is one of the greatest athletes ever to come out of this area. Tommy's sons, Johnny and Tommy, are great athletes. The greatest athlete that I have ever been around is David Winsel, because I used to watch him walk up stairs at City Hall when the elevator wasn't working, and I saw the strength. Never complained. So I don't want to keep embarrassing you, Dave, but
Well, you know, Jim, for 25 years I was able to walk around with the prosthesis, the artificial legs. Both legs, of course, were amputated above the knee, so it was always like it was walking on stilts, basically. And you do build that up and everything, but at the same time, it's a form of exercise that keeps you mentally alert too. At the same time.
Yes, because you always have to be careful.
That's right, and so that's why my wife sometimes says, you know, maybe you should be still walking around, maybe be smarter or something. But no, but it was only after I fell then in 1995 that I broke my arm and I couldn't walk anymore.
You broke the arm.
I broke my elbow, and one of the things that I was worried about at the time was that we were putting together the program for United Nations Day, and I didn't have a guest speaker, and I didn't have a chairperson for United Nations Day. And so who comes to visit me but Tom Munley and Bill Scranton the third,
Yeah.
okay? And so Bill Scranton happens to make one of those statements that you make to everybody who's in a hospital bed. He said, "Is there anything we can do for you?" And I said, "I need a guest speaker for the United Nations." And I said, "Will you do it?" Well, how can he say no, okay? And I turned to Tommy and I said, I need a chairperson for that day. Will you do it? He can't say no either.
No. Well,
That's
I
how
worked
broke
for
it.
you.
That's
I
right.
worked for you, and you signed my check, so I certainly couldn't say no.
And you also were the chairperson
you
one
got
year.
me into
That's
that
right. That's
too.
right. Yeah.
But it was a wonderful thing.
And with Mitch Snyder that time.
Mitch Snyder, we had Mitch Snyder, who was he ended up killing himself.
He was the homeless advocate.
He was a homeless advocate, and we had him in here. And I think Jason Miller wrote a beautiful poem about it. I think I gave it to you. I'm not sure. You might have it in your archives.
And then, of course, after Dave's term was up, I remember Dave decided not to run again. We wanted Dave to run again, remember, Jim?
Yes, we did. We desperately
we
wanted him to
Dave
run again because we didn't want to lose my job.
That's right.
So the night that, well, Dave, I was with Dave, and you were there, Jim, when Dave announced that he wasn't running at City Hall. And then
My brother Tommy, by the way, who was brilliant, as most people in politics know, felt that David was going to win.
Yeah. Oh, I know we wanted David to run again because he was so close to us. Yeah. And then that night, a couple nights later, we were over at the Greenridge Club when Eddie Pisano announced that he wasn't running. You were standing right next to me.
Yes.
And I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was a funny night because you were standing right next to me, and we didn't know what Eddie was going to say.
No, we were
That's right,
flabbergasted.
that's
Yeah, and then Eddie announced that he wasn't going to run. And I remember I looked
Dave
at...
wasn't going to run.
And Dave wasn't going to run. And I looked at you, and you said... you were dumbfounded.
I was. My mouth was open
Yeah.
to my chin. I was like,
Yeah, and you said to me, you said, I'm leaving, I'm going to go for a coffee or wherever you were going. And
my
I
brothers.
didn't go with you. You went with your brothers. And from what folklore and history says that I wasn't at the meeting, but at this meeting up at the donut shop, that's when you decided to. Why don't you tell that story?
well, we were waiting, and we were all geared up to work for Eddie because he was part of the mayor's administration. He was the DPW director, and I was the community development director, and we worked together, taking down old buildings and cleaning up. We did a pretty good job cleaning up the town and fighting the drugs in the Hill, and we were a good team. And the mayor decided he wasn't going to run, and Eddie said he'd like to run, so we all said, well, you're the most visible of us, let's get behind you. And when he made the speech, he flabbergasted us because at the end of the speech, he said, so I will not be a candidate. And Arnie Skakidi from Southside was standing behind me, and I had my tie, as I often do, opened at the neck. I must have been hung in a previous life because I don't like this tightness around my neck. And so
I mentioned that to you that night.
Yeah, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, tighten your tie, you're running. And he was a friend of my brother Tommy's. And it just seemed like so many people came to me, you and other people, and said, well, if Eddie's not running, then you should run. Right. And the rest is history. You know, my brother Tommy, he's passed away now, but he, as you two know, he was one of the finest politicians and political prognosticators in northeastern Pennsylvania. He's legendary. Yeah. And he had a wonderful insight. And I think part of it was because he loved me so much that he worked so hard at it, at going through the numbers and all of that. Dave.
Well, Jimmy, you embarrassed me before, but I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. And I have to say that of all the people that I ever met in politics, you were the one who really took politics and made it a very personal thing. It wasn't so much, people didn't vote for you because of the issues. They voted for you because of the person you were. And you were the type of person who would stop, you would listen to people, what their problems were. You always kept this little notebook in your hand.
Right here,
still
Mayor.
have it here. That's right.
My brother
write
told me I
everything
embarrassed
down,
them with it.
and you would get back to them, and you would do this. And it was the power of personal politics that really, set forth. So And what, do you know what the figures were? I know you won over, the first time you ran, you
1,500
won by
votes.
1,500 votes.
I won.
And then the second time you
The
ran,
second time I won by 8,000
8,000 votes. Yes.
and the third time I won by 4,500 votes.
That's right. And that's
And then I
people
got
don't
beat
win
pretty
by those. That's
soundly
right.
by Chris, but it
Yeah.
was time to go.
Yes.
My brother Tommy, that was one of the things that he taught me. After a while, it's time to go.
Right.
You people want something new. They're just. I said to my brothers, even I'm getting sick of my own voice. They said to me, "Will you stop saying that? People are repeating that."
Well, 12 years is a long time.
12 years is a
It
long
is a
time.
long time, especially.
Tom, why don't you tell us your remarkable career and how you ended up a judge? You're a judge now how many years?
It'll be 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, for time goes by fast.
And Dave and I were both very much involved in
Yes.
that campaign.
Yes,
Would
and,
you?
I have to say this publicly because after practicing law for 30-some years, you know, I got sick. I have multiple sclerosis, and I do a lot with the MS Foundation, trying to help people and talk to people. But I was having a hard time moving around. Practicing law, I was having a hard time. And I studied the law my whole life. And I always wanted to, every lawyer wants to be a judge.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, not every lawyer, but most
Every
of them.
councilman wants to be the
Right,
mayor.
okay. So that's a good point. So I said to myself in 4 years, well, it was 5 years ago when I decided to run. And I was working at WYOU TV at the time. I decided that I wanted to run. The first people that I talked to are Jimmy Connors
Yes.
and David Wenzel.
Mm-hmm.
I said to you two that I was thinking of running for judge. What do you think my chances are? And you, both of you said you encouraged me to run. You said go for it. You're on TV. People know who you
your
are.
TV was
Yeah.
terrific.
So and I was very fortunate because when I did decide to run, Jimmy, you did so much to help me with the commercials and talk to me every day. David Wenzel actually did a commercial
Dave
for me.
endorsed you. That was
And
big.
that was big because Dave's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. And when you run for judge, you cross-file. That means you run as a Democrat and a Republican. I ran on both tickets. I knew I had a pretty good chance of winning on the Democratic ticket. By the way, I ran against two great gentlemen who are close friends of mine. But I just had the advantage of being on television for all those years, so people knew who I
The
was.
law on you.
Right, but David Wenzel, I said, Dave, I know it's going to be asking you to do this for me is a big move because I'm asking you, a Republican, former mayor of Scranton, to support me, who everybody knew I was a Democrat. And David said, I'll do it for you. As a result of it, David was removed from a committee that he was on in the Republican.
And not only that, Ray Alberigi appeared in the same commercial
Exactly.
with Dave.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's my next point because Ray Alberigi, Ray Alberigi knows me my whole life. He's like a big brother to me, and Ray didn't turn me down. Of course, Ray said, "I'll do anything for you," and that's what I love about this area. You know, I could go to you, Jimmy, or Dave Wenzel, or Ray Alberigi, or anybody like that, and you'll help me because you're my friend.
Friends are more important. than
That's what it's all
politics.
about.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, Dave didn't care about the fact that he was a Republican, I was a Democrat, and I do the same thing
Yes.
for him. It didn't matter. Friendship. And the friendships you build up in this area are like no other friendships in the world. They're just something that camaraderie that we have with each other, you can't explain it.
Yes. And my mother used to say, her mother told her, don't ever lose a friend over politics because the people that you're fighting with, they'll be over at Prino's or at Russell's having a drink that night and they'll be best of friends and you and your friend will be on the outs. So I always tried to keep my politics personal. You know, Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. I really feel that all politics is personal. I really do.
That's a good point.
It matters more to people that somebody comes to them and asks them sincerely if they'll help, and then says sincerely, and then I will do what I can to help you.
Well, that's why, That's why
Go on,
we have.
Dave.
That's why we have this little luncheon that we have every year,
Yes.
right before the election, in which Republicans and Democrats, everybody who's involved in
Right.
politics gets together, and everybody needles
Yes.
everybody a little bit or everything. But we all get together when we recognize that this is a terrific system that we're working with.
It's like the
And-
Al Smith luncheon.
And that that's right, and that everyone wants to make a better community. It's just how you're going to go about doing that. And that's when we get together, we more or less reaffirm, our democratic way of
Right.
life. Yeah, which
And then
is,
it's harder to yell at that person the next day in the paper when you're
sometimes you can do it.
sometimes
yeah.
you can do it.
Jim, I remember
Sure.
when I was going to ask Dave to do that commercial, and that's a big
That was a
deal.
big thing.
That's a big thing, and you and I discussed it. And Jim, actually, you wrote the commercial.
I did.
And but I remember a couple of people said to me, Dave Wenzel, he's a Republican. There's no way you're going to get Dave Wenzel to do a commercial for you. I said, you don't know our relationship.
Yes.
That's
and
right.
that's what it boiled down to.
You had been going to movies with Dave for years,
Oh,
right, Tom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
We never missed a good war movie.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no. I remember seeing Nixon with you and Dave and Bill Scranton III.
Right.
And as I was sitting there watching it, I was realizing that Bill Scranton III knew half the people that were in the
That's
film.
right.
Oh,
And I would say to him,
yes, that's
did
right,
that
that's
really happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened. No, that didn't happen. That happened.
Bill
He's
Scranton has
a good
some
friend
great,
of yours, isn't
yes,
he, Tom?
he is, Jimmy.
And
Very-
mine, too.
Very close friend of mine.
Yeah.
He has great stories to tell. Like he had lunch with Ronald Reagan when Ronald Reagan was running for president. They
Right.
met, and he actually, when President Eisenhower was president, and he came to the Hotel German. Bill Scranton was a young boy, and his dad was there, and Bill went in and ate. President Eisenhower ordered lamb chops, and Bill Scranton, young Bill, ate his lamb chops.
He ate his lamb chops?
Someday we should have him on to tell
Oh,
his
my God,
stories.
yeah.
That's
yes.
funny.
Sure. Well, that's for the next program.
Yeah.
Next
Let
show.
me ask either of you if there's anything particularly that you'd be interested in talking about, or in your life or in one of our lives that you think that the people might find interesting.
Well, I can tell you that in my life, I consider myself so fortunate. Yes, one thing I would like to say is I mentioned that we had a class reunion in Jessup High School, and all the classes were there. There was maybe 400 people there. This was last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was the principal speaker, and I made a statement that when I got out of law school, Jim and Dave, I had a chance to go away to a major law firm in Boston, Massachusetts.
You and Barack Obama had the same story here. It sounds
But
familiar.
he's the president. But anyway, but you know what? This was I was out of law school a couple of years, 1976. I at least had an interview with a major law firm, big all over the country. And I didn't even think about it. I had no desire to leave my family and my friends. I wanted to be here in Scranton.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I ever wanted in my life. I wanted to stay here. I didn't want to be in Boston as working with some big law firm. I wanted to walk out of my office and say hello to Jimmy Connors or say hello to Dave Wenzel or call you up and
And
say,
we can
hey,
do that.
yeah. And you can't do that if you're 400 miles away. And that's the way I felt when I was in my 20s, and now I'm in my 60s, and I still feel the same way.
Yeah. Let me ask Dave first. Dave, what's on the horizon for you? Anything that you're looking forward to doing?
Well, I'm working on 2 different projects right now, and both of them have to do with writing. As you know, back in 2006, I wrote the book about Scranton's
Wonderful book.
mayors. And, well, what I'm working on right now is another book, which will be about Scranton's congressmen. And then I put a little asterisk at the end of it, and down the bottom it says, and 1 congresswoman.
Oh,
We
is
had
that Marion Munley?
we elected. No, this was Veronica Boland, who was
No kidding.
back in 1942, and what had happened? Her husband had died, and you just don't appoint somebody to take their place, as you know, in the Congress. You have to run for the office. There was something like around 2 months left in his term when she ran for Congress, and she is now listed as the first woman congressman for the state of Pennsylvania, yes, who was elected. And
That's very interesting.
oh, yes, it is. And
Well,
then-
your book
this
is
it.
terrific.
So the book about the mayors is great, but as we're doing all the research on all of the congressmen who represented our area, we have a number of characters in there, and of course we have national issues that we were dealing with. And
Like strikes and stuff.
well, like strikes and, oh, you name it, any kind of even foreign affairs that we've got involved in with our local congressman. So I'm in the process of doing that. I found out, because Joe McDade was in there for so long a period of time, it's going to have to be 2 volumes. So
Sure.
I'm just working on the first volume, which will take us all the way up to Bill Scranton.
Do you like writing, Dave?
I like to write.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's a lot of fun. I only do it with 2 fingers, but
Yeah.
it takes me
You
time.
type?
It gives me a chance. Well, I do it on my computer.
I wrote a jazz column and an arts column for local magazines for years, and I do maybe 1 article a month, and I loved once it was done.
Yes.
You know, writing is hell, having
Yes,
written is wonderful.
that's true.
Once it's done and it's your baby,
Yeah.
and you're really proud of it, that's good. But boy, it can be agony getting
Yeah,
through it,
yeah.
Dave. I mean, I always felt that
Well,
way.
I set up a kind of like a system whereby I know exactly how I'm going to write about each person, and so it's just a matter of doing the research. That's the main thing. But the second thing I'm doing is my memoirs about what I remember about everything, you know, from
Yes.
growing up, and then of course being the mayor, that's going to take a large part of it, and of course you play a large part in that
wow.
too. Yes, but one thing when you're writing your memoirs is everybody, including the President of the United States, becomes bit characters.
Yeah, because you're the hero.
That's right.
Yeah, President
And it's-
Clinton came in today. Enough said about that.
And he met me.
He met me. Famous people who have met me.
That's right. But I'm working on that, and I'm hoping that it's going to be a good book too.
Oh.
But that I'm writing for my my little grandniece, who
Yes.
is only about less than a year old
Yeah.
right now, who doesn't know anything
Doesn't
about
know
who I
anything
am
about
right
that,
now.
and you're gonna
maybe
leave a
10 years from
record.
now, and she won't. Yeah, that's right.
You know, that's a wonderful thing, and it's great for you to look forward to that. I'm wondering, Tom, you're judge, obviously, and you've been a judge for 4 years, and that's a big enough plate for you to have. But is there anything that you're looking forward to beyond that?
Not at this time, Jimmy, because as both of you know, I'm fighting an illness that I have now, and I'm not ashamed to say that either. I just spoke at this will help people, because I spoke at a cancer forum last week. I have prostate cancer, and it's I'm treating it now.
That's very courageous of you
yeah,
to
I don't
speak
care.
out.
I don't care who knows about it. I mean, my prostate was removed, but I'll be in treatment for a couple more years. But so that's my main concern. But one thing I want to say to both of you gentlemen, one time there was a forum at the Radisson, and all the living former mayors of Scranton happened to be there. James McNulty, Jimmy Walsh, former Judge
Yes.
Jimmy
That's
Walsh,
right, yeah.
Gene Peters was there.
That's right.
You were there. David Wenzel was there. Mayor Doherty was there. And what an evening that was. And I can't remember the occasion. Maybe it had something
It
to do with
was,
Dave's
it had
book.
to deal with, no, it had to deal with the family services of Lackawanna
Raising
County.
some money
They
for
did
them.
that as a fundraiser.
I
Yeah.
don't remember what it was. I wasn't a judge then. I
And
know.
our kids came in and spoke
But
about
it was
it.
such a wonderful event.
Yeah.
When you think of the people we had in our city who are living today, who had been mayors and going up to Jimmy Doherty, Chris Doherty is a mayor today. I mean, we've been fortunate.
We have.
We've been very fortunate to have the people that we had as mayor.
We have very funny politicians, very funny priests and rabbis and ministers. That's one thing about them, you know. I was fond of saying that Susie, my wife Susie, is Jewish and I'm Catholic, and so our wedding song was Oy Vey Maria.
Yeah, I know.
And Father Quinn helped with the ceremony. We had a rabbi and we had a priest
I
to
remember.
marry us, so I'm
I remember.
doubly married.
I remember.
Tom, you're raising after Johnny and Tommy, 2 outstanding young men. Now you're raising Logan.
I have a 9-year-old son with my wife Jodine. He's only 9, and people, they look at me and they look at him. A lot of people, I say to my son Logan, I said, make sure you tell them I'm your father, not something, not the grandfather.
Yeah, right.
But because a couple times,
Sure.
actually, at the Dream Game, my son Logan and I were in the middle of the field making a presentation, and they introduced my son Logan and his grandfather, Judge Tom Munley.
Oh, did
and
everybody laugh?
Logan said, he's not my grandfather, he's my father.
Good for Logan. He's proud of you.
Yeah, he is.
He gets it.
Yeah.
When we had a
Yeah.
party for you that one time, I'll never forget. He was so excited. Remember, David?
Oh,
I was up
yes,
at the
it was.
Ramada.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when he heard you came, he was coming. He was 8 years old at the time. He came in. Guys, he's here.
Yeah.
He's here. He was so excited.
Yeah, I know.
It was like the King of England was walking
thank
in.
you. You know, that's something about holding an office, and you gentlemen went through that because we've been fortunate enough. The people of Lackawanna County trusted us to hold an
Tom.
office, and we have to make sure that we don't let anybody down.
No,
and that,
Tommy, you're
and
right.
And we have to have dignity. You have to have character. You have to have integrity.
Yes,
And I think you two gentlemen
Tommy,
proved that.
I've said this to you, and I say it to Dave, and Dave was a good role model for both of us. We never, the three of us, thank God, never did anything to embarrass our family, our kids, or our parents in politics of a negative nature. We never stole anything. We never smeared anybody. And we always try to run our campaigns on a high level. And I remember the three of us used a commercial that was something, went something like this. I was always taught that you don't build yourself up by tearing the other guy down.
That's right.
So I'm just going to talk about my achievements in this commercial. And boy, that wiped away a whole bunch of things that might have been said about you. And it got you into the positives that you had. I wanted to ask you this. What, any disappointments, Dave, like in your career, your political career? Is there anything that you would have done differently, or that could have turned out differently, or that bothers you?
Not so much that bothers me. It was just maybe like opportunities that came along and that you didn't grasp them at the time. And by not doing that, you begin to realize after, oh boy, we could have done something,
Yeah,
or we could
right.
have had something there.
Right.
And one of the things is that it could still be done right now. When I was up in Erie, PA, I was late getting to the airport, and the mayor of the city said, don't worry about it, I'm going to have a police car take care of you and get you to the airport on time. And what they had up there in all their emergency vehicles is they can be driving down a main street, and they can make all the lights change green on your side and red on all the other
Wow.
three sides. And I said, this would be a terrific thing
Wow.
to have for our, in the city of Scranton. And I wanted to implement that, and
Yeah.
I never got around to
Yeah.
doing that. And today, when I read about emergency vehicles going
Right.
through an intersection and hitting other cars and things of this nature, I said, oh, geez, what could have been, and they
Yeah.
could have done that. And
Well,
everything.
under you, we put up the signs anyway. We got the street signs up, and they're still up, and it only cost us $300 and some thousand, and it was federal money, and it was all those years ago.
Sure.
And they're still up. But let me ask you that, Tom, that same question. Is there anything that you wish you could have done? It took you an awful long time to get into politics.
Right. I wish, Dave, Jimmy, you're right. I wish I got in politics when I was a little younger. Maybe I could have done more. But here's where I'm quite dismayed over what's going on in the judicial area right
Are you,
now.
Tom?
Yeah, because the judges are getting a bad rap. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not in our county, because the judges in our county are wonderful.
They are.
When I was sworn in as a new judge, and I probably will leave somebody out, but Judge Mazzoni, Judge Harhut, Judge Nealon, Judge Menorah, Judge Corbett,
Catone.
Judge Catone was gone by then, but I don't know if I forgot any of the judges, but I think I
Did
mentioned.
you say Harhut?
I said Harhut, I said Judge Nealon and Judge Mazzoni, Judge Barres. They were just so wonderful to me. Judge Girallo, every single one of them.
Right.
Whatever I needed. Here I am, a new judge walking around, and let me tell you something. I don't care how long you practice law. When you're a judge, it's a different deal. It's not the same thing. But every single one of them, like Judge Barres and Girallo in the criminal area, and all the rest of the judges in the civil area, Judge Hart and Corbett in the family law area, they would call me and say, whatever you need, it doesn't matter. I remember I had a problem one day. I was sitting on the bench. I called Judge Nealon up. I said, I have a problem. And he was on the bench himself. He left the bench to come down, and he said, come on, we'll go and meet. Judge Mazzoni showed up. They told me what they thought I should do. Yeah, you know, and right. Judge Memoir helped me in the election bureau. When he and I were the election judges, and that was a very contentious time.
Yes, I remember.
If you remember a couple of years ago. And all these things that you don't expect. I didn't expect these judges to do this for me, but they did. I mean, I remember one time Judge Hart called me in and he said, look, this is the way you should handle this. I was in court for 3 days at a hearing. He said, you could have handled this in 2 hours instead of 3 days. Yeah, yeah. And you know, you learn from these. We have very, very seasoned judges. They're above reproach.
Right.
And I am so proud to serve with all of them.
Yes.
I mean, I couldn't be prouder because of who I serve with. And you asked me and I'm disappointed over what's going on in Luzerne County.
Oh, we all are.
And it's sort of, some people take it out on the judges here.
Yes, sure.
And that's what bothers me.
Tom, what's in the future politically? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I don't think I have a political future. The way I feel.
What?
The way I feel physically, Jim, I don't think I'm going.
Oh
I
my
don't
God,
know.
you'd
The
be
way I feel
wonderful in the
physically.
state.
Right now, I have 2 more years of treatment. I have great doctors helping me out. And I might want to mention, Dr. Priet operated on me. I have Dr. Brereton doing my. I have Dr. Thomas, who's Lisa is my blood doctor. Susie Biancarelli is my personal doctor, and they're all trying to help me. They're coming up with a program to help me. So in 2 years, if I'm feeling okay, who knows what could happen.
Wow, right. Good, Tommy.
Yeah.
Well, we want to see you on a national level or on a statewide level. I do, and I always check with you and how, do you see anything out there that you'd want to get involved in? And so we stand ready to support you.
Thanks,
Mayor, how about you?
Well, Jimmy, let's throw it right back to you.
To me?
What do you see as your political future
I'll
at
announce
this point
here
right
today,
now?
and my wife Susie I think she'll be happy to hear me announce it, but I am planning on retiring. I work for the governor now. I'm the deputy director of his Northeast office, so I have, along with Mike Lombardo, 15 offices in northeastern Pennsylvania, 15 counties, and we take care of his politics and his government and constituent concerns in Lackawanna, Luzerne, Wayne, Pike, Bradford, Lycoming, and all the counties of the Northeast. But you know what, Dave? If I just go out naturally, the governor leaves office in January, and that's like, what, 14 months or so from now. I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to go in December, I think. I think I'd like to do more of this, what we're doing now, talk about the positive things in Scranton. And I've done enough of other things in government, Sure. I've done enough damage, so to speak. And
well, I think you would be very good if you were the executive director of one of these social agencies that we have around here too. I think that would be
that'd be good.
Something to think about.
Like the square dancing committee or something.
Like the square dancers or the
what I'd like to do?
barbershop quartet people.
I'd really like to do more shows like this. And one of the things, like I've already conceived some shows. I'd love to have the musicians from the area on. Now, you can't get all of them on, but I conceived a show where you'd have Frankie Gervasi from the Poets, Jackie Bordeaux from Old Friends, Sal Scramali from Daddy-O and the Sax Maniacs, and talk about that that kind of music that they play. They play a lot of weddings. They play, probably play a few divorces, too. And I'd like them to talk about the rich musical heritage of this area. Then we could do another musical show with the old bands. Doug Smith has Ferdy Bostocchi's orchestra, Gene Dempsey.
Yes.
You used to play in some of those old big bands. You and Pete Noto in the olden days,
Pete
didn't
Noto
you?
did. I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't
Pete
have
always
much-
uses you, too.
I went along with Peter just to,
Oh.
yes, just to
I
keep out
thought
of
you
trouble.
played, too.
No, I didn't.
Well, anyway, I'd like to do shows like that. Then we could do some shows on sports. And really what I think that I can be used mostly for is to show some of the positive things and the joyful things that have happened here in Scranton and in northeastern Pennsylvania.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think we've covered virtually everything. We have some time left. Tom, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I do want to add that you put this show together, Jim, and I think it's great for the city of Scranton and for all the surrounding communities that happen to watch Channel 61. People, people like, you know what? People go to work every day. Sometimes they get beaten down at work, and they come home and they're not too happy. It's a tough atmosphere out there. It's a tough work environment. It's nice to watch a positive show.
Yeah.
And what you're providing, Jim, and you don't want to put this together. You're providing something positive for the people of Lackawanna County to see, and that's what we need. I'm trying to get more positive things going here for all of us, instead of the, you know, you read the paper, you see all the bad things that happened. I'm trying to live the rest of my life because I wake up every morning and I say, I'm lucky. I'm fortunate, I'm still alive. Somebody said, be happy that you're looking down at the grass instead of up at the grass. So I'm happy that I'm still alive, and I want the people to know that no matter what your problems are, there's hope for everybody. And I'm going to do what I can to help the people.
Tom, you know what's astounding? Because I get myself down because I have some medical challenges too. I had some back problems there for a while. And whenever I start feeling sorry for myself, I look at you and
Right.
Dave, and you're so positive. And that's a great model for the people out there. And here's one thing that I would just like to add. Politicians like us are very artful. We're able to, we clean up pretty good. We get the ties, we get the suit, we get the hair sprayed down, and we look the picture of health sometimes. And really and truly, we all have as many problems as the folks out there have. And so I'm starting to realize that everybody's got some physical problems and everybody's got some problems to deal with at home, and yet we persevere. And that's what I want to do too, Tom. And you're an inspiration for me to do that, to just keep on going and, you know, keep spreading the positive things about life, keep spreading it around.
I always thought, Jimmy, that Dave, I remember I saw the picture when George Bush was president. It was in the Washington, it wasn't the Washington Post, but Washington Times,
yes.
of George Bush standing right, he was right next to Dave. Dave was in the White House, and I thought to myself, my God,
No, that's
I'd love, like, here Dave is one of our own.
Yeah.
You know, right there in the
Right.
in the height of the top echelons of power, and that made me feel good. And I always thought Dave had I think Dave has a future in the national level, but he always tells me that he'll never do anything politically.
Well,
to
our
do
wives
that.
they're kind to us, and they say, look, for God's sakes, enough already. I mean, I was out and you were out fighting snowstorms in your administration and floods.
Sure,
We
that's
got,
it, yeah.
we had, that was like Job. It was like, I felt like Job there
Because
with
of the different plagues
the
coming
plagues
down.
coming. I was waiting for the locusts. I mean, we had floods
Yes.
when you got into
That's right,
office,
that's
and
right.
we had so many natural disasters, and I thought we got through them pretty well. But I think our wives, Susie got 287 phone calls one night in
Oh, my God.
the blizzard of '86, I think it was.
geez.
Was it '86 or '90s? the blizzard of '96.
You can't answer a phone that often.
Yeah, yeah. They
Get
just
287.
it was just on our
Yes.
on the machine,
Oh.
and he'll get there. He'll get there. He's on his way.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a shovel. You know.
I
Oh,
remember one time, Jim, several years ago, I asked Dave if he would consider, it's not, you don't run for this office, if you consider it's a cabinet position, being head of the Veterans
Yeah,
Administration.
he'd be wonderful at that.
And actually, it's a cabinet level position.
Why not?
And but Dave didn't want to pursue it at the time. He said, "I'm not interested in going to Washington."
Yeah.
I think that had he pursued that position, I think George Bush should have considered him for that.
Well, he
top,
should have.
for that top post.
That's
He
funny.
should've.
That's funny you should mention that because I did serve 4 years on the National Council on Disability down in Washington. Going down there every month for meetings and all. And when I left that position on the National Council, that was kind of like the veterans position. The person who took my position was a former director of Veterans Affairs for the United States. Yeah.
That would have been a great position for David.
But Jimmy, in future programs, maybe you would like to bring on people who are authors, who are local, who have written something about
Sure.
local history
Sure.
or something of this nature, or even written something about that's not local, but who are local people,
Sure.
and ask them because I always like to watch on C-SPAN the books
The
on
book.
the weekends and everything
Yeah.
that they have, and I think we could do something locally like that.
Well, Mayor,
and kind of push everything.
people are looking into their past now. This great Irish Ballina Scranton connection, and people are looking into who they're related to and when their ancestors came. And I know Mike Bracey back in Manuka, he wrote a book called My City on the Hill. I think I might have given that to you when you were doing your research, I'm not sure.
Right.
But he wrote about growing up in Manuka, and he researched the background. Eddie Van Winkle's wife is a wonderful writer, and she's up in East Mountain,
Right.
and she's writing on all of the little families and large families and all of the little towns in the area, and she's a remarkable writer. So with what you're doing and that, we can keep Scranton alive. What the heck, we have the statue of John Mitchell over there. So much has happened here. Coal was king. The railroads were king. This was the place to be, and it will be again. Let me ask you, Mayor, if I could switch you to the national stage for a moment. Do you have great hopes, or do you have great fears about where we're going nationally and internationally?
Oh, I think I'm always very optimistic about what we're going to be doing as a nation and going. And I don't mind even mentioning that I voted for President Obama.
Did you, Mayor?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Good for
and
you. I did
and
too.
I considered everything, and I followed the election religiously. I even went to John McCain's rally
Yes.
and everything. But I just felt that maybe this was the time,
Time for
because
a change.
I felt that it was almost like when Kennedy was running back in 1960.
Yes.
That they said, the nation more or less said, let's take a flyer, okay? We don't really know that much about John F. Kennedy and everything, but he presents a nice, youthful message, and it's a message of hope, and that's what I voted for.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I think he's doing a good job.
so much of who the three of us are really goes back to the Kennedy era.
Yes, that's
And
right.
we're
They
always,
were our
yeah.
inspirations.
And even with Jim McNulty, if we were talking with him right now,
Yes.
he would say the same
Yes,
thing.
and Bobby Kennedy and Jack Kennedy and Martin Luther King.
Everything, that's right.
Tommy, how about you? What do you see for the future in the United States
I
and
see.
internationally?
I won't comment on anything of any office holder, but I've been always positive about this country, Jim, because believe it or not, last night I was sitting down, and people might say how ridiculous. I read. Sometimes I read the Constitution just to familiarize myself a little more with what's going on. I think about our founding fathers when they wrote this in the 1780s, and I'm thinking what insight they had.
They were
But this
brilliant.
country of ours is so great that I see a bright future for us for the next couple hundred years.
I agree with you, Tommy.
Sure.
And we're going to sign off now, but I hope that I get to spend more time both privately and publicly and professionally with these two gentlemen. They're two heroes of mine. I love them both. I don't mind saying that. And I'm wishing ECT, Electric City TV, and Mark McGlory and John Darcy, all the luck in the world, and Mayor Doherty, and I hope we could have more and more and more shows like this with more and more people out there who care about Scranton and northeastern Pennsylvania. So as they say in Manuka, charge it.
Dark and sad.